started. So thank you all for coming today. How many of you have been to a conductor event before today? Awesome, so lots of new faces. So the conductor is a public-private partnership between the University of Central Arkansas and Startup 50 Consulting. So we work to inspire entrepreneurship and innovation in the Central Arkansas area. And so we do that through events like these. And so what we want to do today is inspire you to be an entrepreneur, inspire you in your career. And so as you're, listening to Sarah and Catherine talk about, her journey, I want you to think about questions that you have for her, because at the end we'll have a little bit of a Q&A. And so without further ado, I'm going to give it over to Sarah.
Thank you, Grace, and I'm super excited to be here presenting as an alum of the 10X Conductor and to be able to give my startup story. So can I just segment the group a little bit? Who all is a student right now? Okay, and then professionals working, okay. Scott, debatable. He's working, he goes to an office every day. Okay, so that's helpful because I have a real heart for students, and I want to make sure that my story might inspire a little bit about career paths. I love seeing so many women in the group, especially I think women don't tend to go into. Okay, so with that, I'll give my story, and it starts when I was little. And when I was little, I was very mediocre. And the problem when you're mediocre and you're little, well, it's not a problem to be mediocre when you're little if you don't care about being mediocre. But I wanted so badly to make all A's. So like in the second grade, third grade, fourth grade, I always had like A's, but B's and C's mostly. But it killed me because I wanted to make all A's. And it was crazy to me because the other people that made similar grades to me, they didn't seem to mind. And I was like, that's unfair. They don't care. They're fine with this. Why do I care so much? But then the people who made all A's, they didn't seem to care either. I cared really bad about making all A's. Okay, so flash forward, I am continuing on this quest to really be an excellent student. And though I do get better over time, there is still that one B that just keeps appearing. And I just realized that I am destined to a life of mediocrity. So in high school, I do my college applications, and of course, I get a 27 on my ACT. I tried so hard to get a better score. It felt like everyone got to just walk in and take that test, and you hear the stories. Yeah, I didn't study at all. I walked out with a 35, right? And then here, I wanted it so bad, but I couldn't ever get it. Okay, so this was 20 years ago, really turning 40 this year. And so I got into this awesome little women's college in North Carolina. Has anybody heard of Salem College? Anybody? Okay, it's the oldest women's college in the country. It's Moravian, cute little college. Okay, so I go to Salem College. And there, I am still pretty mediocre, although I'm definitely doing pretty well in college, okay? But there is this professor who was in one of my business classes, and he was in particular a finance professor. And I have a lot of personality, so there was a lot of times where I could get away with stuff deadlines weren't really deadlines, because I could kind of talk my way through them. But he was that professor that took none of it, okay? So Professor Yowie. So Professor Yowie looked at me and he said, I think you have a different path than you might realize. And he said, but here's the thing, I want you to start taking finance classes. And I was like, finance classes? And he was like, yes, finance classes. So I looked at the schedule, and there were no finance classes at Salem College. Now, there is another college in that town. It's called Wake Forest. Have y'all heard of this college? Now, it's a really good school. That's where the 35 on your ACT kids are going to school, right? And the only reason I knew I knew a lot about Wake Forest. I knew that there were 7 stoplights between us and Wake Forest because there were only 7 stoplights between us and boys. So we would go there on the weekends and we'd have a lot of fun, and that's the only way I knew Wake Forest. Okay, but now I needed to use this little opportunity, cross-registration, where I could take classes over there. And we didn't get priority, but if they had space, they would let you into a class. So I signed up for an intro to finance class there. And I don't know like how to describe the feeling of driving onto that campus for that class that day. I can still like remember like passing the Wake Forest sign and feeling that sense in my throat, like that sense of dread and doom. Like I was afraid they would realize I was a fraud, I wasn't supposed to be there, there's no way I'm gonna hang. And I go to the park, go to the business school, and there's like an auditorium. I'm used to these like smaller classes, right? Because my school had 450 students in it. It felt like that many people just in one room, right? And I look around and it's all men. Now, maybe there were some women in there, but in my head, it was all men, okay? And I almost ran. I am not kidding. I almost ran. I was like, this is not gonna work. Like, there's no way I can hang. Like, clearly I can't do this work. But the moment where I was about to run, a female walks in, and she walks to the front of the class, and that is our professor. I didn't know it was a female. I didn't know anything about it. I knew Kay Rogalski. That was all I knew. I didn't know that was a female, right? And every single class, there was this crazy, daunting title of class, like discounted cash flows. And I'd freak out, okay? Because it was gonna be discounted cash flows. And then she would get to the front, back when we still had chalkboards, and she would use a piece of chalk and she would do a discounted cash flow. I would like slowly relax because it was not hard. It was amazingly not hard. And every single class had the freak out and they had the, what? Why do people make finance sound so complicated? So then I was feeling pretty good. I got my A. And then I was like, well, I'm gonna sign up for advanced financial management at Wake Forest. And so I walked into that class and it was hilarious. Full 180, right? Like just the opposite, okay? So here's this guy and it is all jargon and it is all complicated. But I get to keep saying to myself, no, Sarah Catherine, this is easy. This is easy. This is easy. They're making it sound hard, which we now call jargon, but this is easy, okay? So I survived it, made a gentleman's B, and graduated. And then what I did after that, I was gonna go work for this investment bank, Stevens, back home. And instead I decided to do that thing. Is anybody gonna take like a gap year after college? Like volunteer? I don't know. It was kind of a thing back 20 years ago. So I took a gap year and joined the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. And I was placed out in Arizona. And so here I am out in Arizona serving the homeless and decided to stay a couple more years. And some folks took me aside because I was starting to get into some policy ideas and some policy work. And someone hilariously kind of mentioned to me, hey, you should go to Harvard, and to their public policy school, the Harvard Kennedy School. And I was like, that's really funny. And they're like, no, really. Like they have this specialty on the stuff you're doing, and there's this professor there. So I read his books, and I was like, yeah, go there. And I said, all right. Now, first of all, though, you got to take the GRE, and you have to get a minimum score on it. Like if you don't get this score, you can't even try to get it. And so I can't remember what the number was, like 630 or something. And so I studied, I hired a tutor, every last dollar was going to every last minute. And I went in and I took that test. And the best way I can describe it is to say, I nailed it. I got the minimum score required to get into Harvard. That didn't get me in though, okay? So then after that, I had to do the applications. So through the process of doing the applications, I emailed the professor, that professor at Harvard that did the stuff I liked. And I said, hey, I've been reading your stuff, like this is so interesting. And he said, in a series of exchanges, he said, it sounds like you'd be a good fit here. And he CC'd this person. And I looked at this person and I was like, oh, that's funny, it's the director of admissions. And a few weeks later, it was announced that he was the incoming dean of the college. So let's just say, pretty soon after that, I got my acceptance letter. So I can now honestly tell you, I talked my way into Harvard. I just want to make sure I really did talk my way in. Okay, so after Harvard, I have a public policy degree. And in public policy, what you are doing is you are looking at problems from 5,000 feet. Instead of being in the weeds, trying to fix them where you go, you take a step back and you say, wow, how can we fix this more systematically? Okay, so out of Harvard, I go ahead and take up that job opportunity at Stevens because I now have student loans, and I get a job as a stock picker. Does anybody know what it is to be a stock analyst? Anybody? So do you want to say buy on a stock that's going to go up or down? Up, right? So you're trying to basically say, I think this stock's going to go up, so please go buy it. It sounds so exciting, right? Okay, so I did that in 2007. And so let me tell you, when you're a stock picker in 2007, does anybody here know what the stock market was doing in 2007? Yeah, it was doing awesome. I'm feeling good. I'm like, everything I say goes up. Like, this is fantastic. Well, what happened in 0809? The housing crash, and then Lehman, Bear Stearns, and then Lehman, and then what happens? The stock market falls like a knife. Okay, but let's put some context in here, okay? Because this is that Arizona story is important. What I should have been doing is caring about what everybody else was caring. Let's find the winners among losers, okay? So the stock market's dropping like a knife. Like, let's figure out how to find some way to win. What am I thinking about? I'm thinking about the people, like you just said, that lost their houses. Because that's what caused the stock market crash, is a bunch of people bought houses they fundamentally couldn't afford. So guess what? The people who bought the stocks that went down, those stocks went back up. And they have more than doubled or tripled from the bottom, right? The people that bought houses, those are my friends. Did you know that I almost bought a house as a volunteer at age 23? Why would I have bought a house? It was the thing to do. It was the responsible thing to do. Everyone's like, why in the world are you throwing money away in rent? Why don't you buy a house? Yeah, you make $24,000 a year. Go buy that $300,000 house, right? So this was normalized among everyone, and I almost bought that house. I didn't, because my dad talked some sense into me, but my friends bought the houses. And so this was the moment. This was the public policy moment where I thought, now wait a minute. How is it possible that this many people bought houses they couldn't afford? Isn't that crazy? That our entire economy could collapse because of a personal finance decision? Right? Isn't that nuts? Okay, so I looked at personal advice because it feels like every other commercial on TV is someone wanting to give you financial advice, right? So there's all that financial advice out there, but then people are still majorly messing up. What's the disconnect? And here's what it is. There's two types of financial advice, where there were two types of financial advice at the time. There was the people who wanted to sell you something. So I'll sell you insurance, I'll sell you annuities in exchange for advice. Is that advice? If you're selling something, are you giving advice? No, you just have a scheme to sell more of what you're selling, right? You get to use advice in your own way to make a sale. The second form of advice is people who take your money. So let's say you have $500,000 stuffed under a mattress. They take that money and they invest it. This is a little like becoming a marathon coach, where on mile 1, you're like, okay, you can do this. Here's our strategy. And then you show up at mile 26, right as they're crossing the finish line. Dig deep, you've got this. And the runner is like, dude, where were you on mile 15 when I was dying? That's what that is. Because if you have $500,000, you don't need an advisor. You needed an advisor before you had $500,000. In fact, when you had $50,000 in student loan debt, you had negative $50,000. That is when you need an advisor, right? So neither of those models would support being able to fundamentally be available to someone about to make a really stupid housing purchase. So I could not figure out how to get this idea out of my head, and so I started a company. And my idea was people would be able to walk through the door and they could be able to get basic advice. Remember, I'm not trying to be fancy. right? I'm not trying to be a genius in the finance market. I'm just trying to give people usable, accessible advice that they don't do anything dumb like buy a house they can't afford. So I'll never forget my first client who walks in, and even though I was going to work with like kind of average people, like average salary, that's my goal. I got this physician who made a lot of money, like $500,000 a year. And she's like, hey, I'm in financial trouble. I heard I can come and talk to you. And I was like, well, sure. And I was like, well, after all the questions, I found out how much money she made. And I remember thinking in my head, oh, this will be easy because we'll just, flip some things around. It'll be easy, like 2 hours tops. 3 hours in, we had $300,000 in student loan debt. We had an underwater mortgage. I don't even know how you can have an underwater mortgage in our market, but she had a $750,000 mortgage that she realized was unaffordable after the payments started coming in. But then when she tried to sell it, she couldn't sell it because she had financed the whole thing. Like she put no money down. So she couldn't sell it because she didn't have the cash to pay the difference. She had bought a car for her son, and because she had so many payments, she had financed a mattress, she had financed her furniture. The best interest rate she could get was 22%. 22%. Someone making $500,000 a year. This was the moment that I realized we are all in the same boat, whether we make $30,000 or $50,000 or $500,000. We are all falling victim to the same things that are happening in our culture of materialism. We don't have a culture of saving, right? We have a culture of spending, like go spend. Like I get offers all the time to like write checks out of my credit card. Like it is easy to see how someone highly educated, who makes a lot of money, can fall into the same traps. And then you have people who aren't as educated falling into the even worse traps when it comes to what's happening on their money, right? Okay, so what's interesting is I did not build a company to help a lot of rich physicians. That is not what I was intending to do, but that is what happened. So our name got out because there are all these young physicians graduating from med school with $500,000 in student loan debt, and there is no place for them to go. And we are the only fixed fee people in town, meaning the country. So to this day, I get 3 to 5 emails coming in from my website from some state, from Alaska, like wherever, of a physician who wants to pay several $1,000s and basically learn how to save, learn how to pay off their student loan debt, and manage their own money. And that's fine. I have financial planners that work at Aptus, and they handle it, but it's not my passion. A few years ago, though, something changed significantly because I got the opportunity to come in and bid on a retirement plan. Now, of course, my instinct is always like, oh, that's too complicated. I can't do that, ladies. Please don't do that. People told me not to do that, but I still do it. Like, take the opportunity before you say you can't do it, right? So I freaked out, and I actually told this person offering that I couldn't do it, and thank God she insisted that I look into it, okay? So I looked into it and realized this is crazy, because with retirement plans, there's a company that does all the work, and it's a different player. They're called a record keeper. The advisor on a plan actually doesn't really have to do much work at all. You pick the investments, and then you educate the participants. So what's funny is you'll have these folks, these advisors on a plan, who come in and do an hour-long presentation on inflation-adjusted rates of return of mid-cap value stocks, and everyone is riveted, of course. And they come in for an hour and do it, and they leave, and they collect their quarterly check that could equal $5,000 a year, $10,000 a year. No one really knows what they make because money just comes out of the plan, disappears out of people's accounts, and goes into their bank accounts. Do y'all realize that's what happens? That's how people make their money with their clients not knowing how much they're paying. How about that for an industry? Okay, so I thought, now wait a minute, surely we can do this better. And so my team and I got together and we were like, what if we reinvented the financial plan, the retirement plan? What would we want people to get out of a retirement plan? Does anybody have any guesses of what you'd want people to get out of a retirement plan? How about the ability to retire one day? Right now, we have baby boomers who literally are working at age 65 and are desperate to stop working and they can't. If you think healthcare is painful, if you think that the cost of childcare is painful, I think all of those are painful. If you think that student loans are painful, I think those are painful. But let me tell you, I will put the inability to stop working when you're tired and you're hurting and you're sick as the worst possible thing out there. And you're not looking at a 1 year thing. Like when you have a healthcare crisis or something, usually it's like a 1 year or 2 year thing. You're talking about for the next 30 or 40 years. It is the most severe thing that I can imagine now after being across the table from people who can't retire and have no money and are completely scared. So we thought, what if we built a retirement plan that actually helped people retire? And so this is what we realized. So the first thing is take out the investments. If you have people walking into a room that don't know what a stock or a bond is, why are we talking to them about mutual funds? Investments are not going to make you retire. So first of all, we decided stop the distraction with the investments because that is either paralyzing to people or they're making mistakes. Okay, so let's take that off the table. And so there are these new investments called target date retirement funds. It's one fund. People can put all their money in one fund and it puts them across all stocks, all bonds, and then guess what? It adjusts them over time. They never have to think about investments again. Okay? So we get to take that off the table. But the important thing is, the second critical piece is the personal nudge. When we looked at the technology out there to help people save, it doesn't work. Right? AI can't get people to save. Like, unfortunately, it takes a human to sit down and say, I care about you, I want you to be able to retire one day, and I want you to save 10%, because 5% is not going to get you there. So we went into this first company, so we won the bid. So interestingly, we bid on price, the same price we charge everybody per hour. We bid on price to come there for 4 whole days, morning to evening. Now remember, the predecessor had been there once a year for 1 hour. We won on price. That's how crazy this is. So to have a team of 3 people there for 4 days, all day, that's crazy. So we go in there and we do an enrollment meeting. And instead of the investments, we do an argument for people to save, like a TED Talk, okay? And we assumed that people didn't agree with us. We assumed that you walked in saying, I don't believe in saving. And so we built the argument from the ground up. And then after that, we met with every single employee for 30 minutes. And most of the people, it was like, yeah, they increased their savings. It was really fun. We got to cheerlead them. But that is where I came face to face with this. A person who looks so put together. Happy, great. They walk through the door and then they just melt. We've realized we have to have tissue boxes at all of our meetings because they are holding this secret of credit card debt, student loan debt, of things that they're really ashamed of that they've never been able to talk to another human about. And it's interesting, they would walk in, spill it, get really, be really ashamed, be really sad. But then after 30 minutes, when we could work through a plan to get their savings up, pay down the debt, they would walk out like a different person. So we ended this enrollment and found out that we had a 68% increase in savings. Imagine, you get to spend all day talking to people all day long, and you get to know that at the end of the day, you have permanently changed these people's lives. Does anybody know the percentage of people who change their retirement plan contribution after they make it the first time? What percentage ever go back and change it? 10%. So we know that 90% of those people are now going to retire. Can you imagine? We get to do that all day long. So one of the things we realized coming out of that is A, that's our business. That's the business we want to do all day long. And B, we realized that we needed to do financial wellness. People are not learning about, has anybody here taken a class on student loans? Like a whole semester long class? How about a 2-hour class? Y'all, we have people lacking a fully formed prefrontal cortex at age 18, making the most significant decisions of their lives, I have people in my retirement plans who are 25 years old and have $80,000 student loan debt and make $30,000 a year. And they're not entirely sure how they got all that debt, okay? We are not being taught that clearly. So we created a 10-course financial wellness offering. And so every time we come back, so we've done 18 of these retirement plans now. We've got thousands of participants in them. We have an average savings increase of 50% from all of our plans. And every time we go back and do another plan, instead of doing the same recycled talk every time, it's a new financial wellness talk, a new financial wellness talk, a new financial wellness talk. So that is the dream for us. We know that at the end of the day, the more companies, the more people that we can get access to, we actually believe that we can fix the retirement crisis. And so when I think about my startup story, it's not about building a business. It's not about the P&L, the profit and loss statement, I try not to use jargon. It's not about all of that. To me, the story is about seeing if you can build a company that in the end can actually change people's lives. And so far, we've been able to do that. So I thank you all for your time and would love any questions, especially students maybe thinking about finance. I would love to talk you over the edge into taking that finance class.
Does anybody have any questions for Sarah Catherine on her startup story or her personally or her professional journey? I did want to ask you, so one question that I have, so you talked a little bit about like when you first started Aptus Financial. So what would you say, what was your biggest hesitation into, because you kind of just came over that, like, oh yeah, I just started this company. So what was your biggest hesitation in trying to take that leap to, okay, I'm going to employ myself?
Yes, so that's a really good point. Actually, it was that easy for me because there's a side story that was happening where I had gone from spending all of my money that I ever made to having a really key person in my life convince me that I was about to handcuff myself to whatever job I ever had, and I took it to heart. So I started saving a very large percentage of my pay while I was at the investment bank. And so whereas everybody else was buying the little 3 Series BMWs, little nice apartments, I found a little $500 apartment, drove a beater car, and saved a massive amount of money. Now, I was not saving because I thought I was going to start a business. I thought I was going to work at Stevens the rest of my life. I love the company. But I would say if that cash pile grew, and the idea was incubating, it gave me the imagination to even think, should I start a company? Does that make sense? So I think that the pile of cash is really should be a star player in the startup story.
And what can we do as a group here today to help you, to help Aptus Financial?
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, for the students in here, especially the ladies, dudes, I want you to save too, but I have a program for ladies to save, and it's called Save 10. Has anybody heard of that? Okay, so if you haven't heard of it, you're on Facebook, and I realize that only old people are on Facebook anymore, but go to Facebook and go to the Save 10 group. So we have a group there. We'd love for you to join. And I would love you all to commit to saving 10% for retirement when you start your first job, okay? So you start your first job and you sign up for the company retirement plan, and they're gonna ask you, how much do you wanna save? And I want you to put, guys too, 10%, and don't ever change it, okay? Got it? How much are you gonna save? 10%. That is the best thing you can do for me, is if you solemnly promise you're going to do that. But yeah, and pray. If you could pray for Aptus. I have a big pitch this afternoon. It would be massive for my company if we got this. And I was printing things at Office Depot yesterday for it, and they're so nice there. And the guy was like, I just have a really good feeling about this one. He's like, I'm going to pray really hard for it. So yes, I always accept
This
those.
is the first time we've gotten an ask for people to pray, so I'm going to take that one.
We could affect a lot of lives if we had it.
Awesome. So anybody else have any questions for Sarah Catherine? Please
How many employees do you have?
We have 5, and we have 1 that we're transitioning to hopefully be a 6th. And we have a lot of females, so we have, so it'd be 4 females if she joins and 2 males. So we're really interested in women becoming financial advisors.
And are your clients in Arkansas or the United
No,
States?
so most of our clients are out of state. So, yeah, I would say about maybe 15% of our financial planning clients are here in Arkansas. So the blogosphere has this movement called the FIRE movement, Financial Independence, Retire Early. And since we were early to create a fixed fee company, there's now a lot of them. And since we were kind of one of the first to do that, so it turns out there were a couple other companies at the same time with the same idea, which is so cool. And so now it's a bigger industry of finance, but because we were a first mover, we're still like the default name that physicians pass around the country. So we don't really advertise, it just kind of naturally happens, but just all over, just from these blogs that physicians write. The retirement planning business though, that is all local. But we do have a lot of business in Northwest Arkansas.
Do you have like an office?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have an office in Little Rock in the Midtown area. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, anybody else have any questions before we wrap up? Okay, well, thank you all so much for coming, and thank you, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.